I must say that prior to being trained, I've heard a lot about GMOs, and then I don't know whether I should term them as fake news, because of course I'm a fact checker now. Then I wasn't a fact checker, so once I heard them, they had serious impact on me, because I was like, I even heard that the apples that we eat are GMOs, and so I was like, oh, because of that, trust me, up till now I don't eat apples. I don't eat apples. And we had that I remember on one radio station, I don't remember the station, but I was once listening to a radio station, and then they were talking about GMOs. And the person on air said that when you cut a GMO fruit, you would find blood. I was like, really? Then we didn't need it in Ghana at all. I mean, what is such a fruit coming or vegetables coming to do on our market? And so I think that kind of story, the fake news, the misinformation was so strong that personally, even as a journalist, it had an impact on me. And like I said, up till now, I find it very difficult going out to buy apple, the foreign apple to eat. Such trainings, they are helpful. When I got the invitation just yesterday, I was like, okay, these guys are back. Why do I say they are back? I have been opportunity to be part of a training, which was held about 5 years ago. That was even before the whole topic of GMO came up and everybody was making so much arguments about. I got the opportunity to go into the CSIR FUMESA office, the lab. And guess what? I think we spent about 4 days in Ejiso. And we went through the process to a point where we woke up early morning, went to the field with the scientists, where they picked the genes that they were looking for from the flowers of the plants. And we were told we're supposed to go very early because there shouldn't be sun and all that. And so we monitored how they had some rubber, plastics. They picked that. We went to the lab. They did a cross. In our local science class, we say crossword pollination, right? They did that some of us got the opportunity to actually do that. Then we were told that in 2 or 3 days, this is what will happen. And so we went through that process and we saw what happened. I was like, so that was it. And they've made so much misinformation and fake news about it. And so for me, it helped. Since I attended that first training, it changed my perspective. But it didn't happen again. And we were just a few journalists. We were mostly all from the northern region. Maybe because FUMESA is in the northern zone and SARE is also in the northern region. So they brought northern reporters. And I believe since then, every northern reporter's perspective changed. But then we are just a few in the northern sector. We felt it should have been a nationwide something. But the scientists went to sleep, I guess, or maybe because of funding, because it was one of the issues they mentioned, that funding for research in this country is very low. And so perhaps that was the reason why they stopped. But it stopped, and then now that they are bringing this whole thing back, I think it will be helpful. For me, my recommendation as I am sitting in this training is to finish and tell them that, look, the exposure you give to us in the north, you should do some. Yes, those are an editorial meeting, but some will still not appreciate it until they go to the field to see. And so for me, I would even recommend that you take them to FUMESA, you take them to SARE, let them go and see for themselves and make their own decision. And I believe that their stance will change, just like mine changed once I got exposed to that training. Previously, when I used to work with TV3, of course, it would have been my story for perhaps tonight or tomorrow morning or midday or something. But now I run a media agency. Unfortunately, I don't do agric stories on my platform. However, the only time you find me doing an agric story is when it has a woman face, a woman in agriculture, a woman. However, because I do climate change, I actually got interested in this training because of the climate aspect. Because we should ask the scientists, what is the impact of their work on the climate? And so what it basically means is that in as much as I don't do direct agri story again, because of climate, I am connected to this. And so I will look at the climate aspect, ask me questions based on that. And of course, I'll write stories on that. And I also even report for China Dialogue, which is basically into climate, and other climate fellowship. And so this for me will be the opportunity to even engage more with the scientists, because now you have new ones who have occupied the space. So then I get the opportunity to do this, get them information right. And if I'm even given the opportunity to sit on radio stations in Ghana, because we are talking about Ghana, it is our people that must read and hear and watch, so they can also make informed decisions. And if I'm called upon to give my perspective of what has changed after visiting the lab and the field, why not? I will do it. I'll be the campaigner for the GM technology. It's not a bad thing after all, and we've been deceived for so many years. If we really want to have food security, then GMO is the way to go.
The whole issue about GM, it's a conversation that, for me, I think it has been tilted towards negativity. It has always been that GMO has to do with chemicals. GMO product or food or anything GMO is something that has a lot of side effects that we shouldn't even go, an area that shouldn't be talked about. So it's something that we will not actually push for GMO. Proud to this sensitization forum. That was my understanding. That was purely chemicals, picking something from somewhere, mixing things, and getting a breed that is kind of out of the conventional. But now, after the training, or let me say after the workshop, listening to the experts, the scientists and everything, I kind of have a different perception. I understand that the whole GM thing, technique, everything has to do with genes. And this time around, we are looking at sustainability of food safety, and safety is assured. When it comes to regulation, they are making sure that we go through all the regulation so that the food is safe. And then the FDA woman was saying something which caught my attention. When we're talking about food safety, we are looking at you taking that particular food or that particular product in its state that you are supposed to take it. And so if we are supposed to take para, or let me say, she used a simple example for all of us, palm. We know that before you want palm oil, you have to get the nuts, everything, then you cook, and then you will use it for the palm oil. And use it to cook. Then you decide to just pick the whole nut and then start using it. You are not using it at the state in which we want you to use it. And so then you can have some side effect. And so it's similar with the GM foods. The effects that you would have will be when you are not using it within that particular space you're supposed to use it. So the understanding is clear, the education is good, the sensitization is good. Now what we do is that as editors, we have desks in our newsrooms. We have desks that we do food. We have agriculture reporters that report in this field. We'll have to extend the knowledge beyond what we have here. Let them understand. Try to build that network where the reporters will be able to develop more comprehensive stories in these areas. So when they bring the comprehensive stories in these areas, our audience would understand it better. For us, we use our local language in transmitting our news bulletin. And so we even stand a better opportunity to make our people understand it better in our local language and make them understand the whole thing about GM foods. Because trust me, the person out there thinks GM is something that we are not supposed to even venture at all. But the education is much clearer, and for me, it's good I participated, and I sincerely appreciate building my knowledge in this particular area. The training is good. At the end of the day, we are looking at food sustainability. We as journalists have a role to educate, to inform, and everything. And so, realizing that the information out there is kind of, what I say, negativity, like people really don't understand the whole thing about GM. Now we understand it better. Why don't we create segments? Why don't we find time to make our people understand? One thing we've always had challenge with is resource persons. People being ready to speak about GM foods, and they're ready to answer the questions and make the ordinary person understand. And so I'm hoping the resource persons who are here, those behind the education, would avail themselves. Then we can also try to create the media space. As news editors, if we understand it better, when the reporters bring their story, we edit it and make sure it is read or communicated as it's supposed to be. So that is what we are going to do. We'll create the space. And we hope that those who would be able to help explain it better would also be available to help us do it better.
My knowledge about GMOs, I think, started some time back, having been in the media for some time now. In the early days when the debates around GMOs came up, I think it was somehow dicey because the perception was that we are bringing in genetically modified goods or commodities that were somehow dangerous for consumption. And so with that kind of knowledge or perception, it became very difficult to accept GMOs or every other kind of debate around that topic because the bias has already been created. Yeah, so I think over time the debate has been ongoing, and for me as a specialized science and agric reporter, I think based on the trainings I've been part of and then the knowledge I've acquired so far, I feel that GMOs are now, I think they are safe for consumption because they are not chemicalized crops, but rather genetically modified crops with that have been produced under carefully thought through methods of scientific procedure. And so I think that's what I have learned about the GMO debate so far. The perception now has changed because from where I stand, I know that they are safe for consumption, and that is a scientific method of sustaining food security, looking at the climatic conditions that we find ourselves in now. Yeah, so I think this is something for the future if we want to promote access to food and good nutrition for the people of the country. My reportage about this whole GMO topic will change now. It's now going to be more of balance and accuracy and trying to, make it as plain and simple and mostly as clear as possible in the minds of consumers. Yeah, because I think it's always good to set the balance. It's always good to set the balance and then let the consumers be clear in their mind about GMOs, and that's what I'm going to do.
Frankly speaking, just like an ordinary human being, when we started hearing about GMO and the kind of articles people used to write in the papers and all that, it pointed to a negative, if you like, way for GMO. And those times, when you have stories to edit, you have to do some research on the net before you find out exactly what it's about. And we try to balance it because, you see, as a media institution, if you don't have enough knowledge, you are careful to come out. So when we feel that these are gray areas, we drop them. But from today's interaction and conversation, I've got to know that there's so much that we need to know, and we have known them. And so henceforth, our perception has changed about GMO. That indeed, if you want to talk about food security, GMO is key. Because as part of modifying the genes, to create more and more, the world is hungry. GMO is key in ensuring food security. That's what I would say. And so for all the doomsayers and all those who are against it, it's now for us, the media people, to give them the right kind of information, as we have heard from the experts and all those involved in this kind of industry. I think it's obvious that we are supposed to be the channels to propagate this kind of positive information that we have now. And so on our radio stations and on TV stations and TV programs and interviews and all kinds of platforms we have, we're going to make sure that we sustain this kind of momentum to let people know exactly what GMO is. That is not anything against anybody's health, as people have thought.
As journalists, we are open to all kinds of ideas. Some of the ideas are negative, some are positive. So it's a cocktail of the negative and the positive. But one characteristic of a very good journalist is the ability to read between the lines and to make sound judgments based on science for you to educate the public appropriately, because education is one of our fundamental functions as journalists, and the Bible, which is a perennial spring of wisdom and infallible guide of conduct, teaches us that if a blind man leads a blind man, both will fall into a ditch. So when it comes to GM technology and others, I would prefer to say that some of us are blind, scientifically blind, professionally blind, technologically blind. So the only way to cure our blindness and for us to serve as the light and beacon to others is to be capacitated in this area. And this is exactly what has taken place here. So I believe the participants have been blessed, have been exposed to modern ideas. So they are in a position to lead a crusade in educating the citizens on the benefits of this technology. Now, our knowledge in this area was limited. Now, so expansive, we updated from what's happening in the laboratory, what's happening in the field, what's happening globally. So that our education will be holistic, from the science, from the laboratory to what's happening in the field, and the benefit to accrue to us as a nation. Education, we all know, is a process and not a destination. So as journalists, we are expected to serve as apostles and evangelists of this technology, so that this whole nation will not only imbibe it, this whole nation will internalize this modern trend in Greek, so the whole nation will benefit maximally.